So the continuation of meeting the Summerhill community. We have a panel of staff members here. Well, we can introduce you. So why don't you go and introduce yourselves first?
Yeah, my name is Monse. I'm the class 1 teacher and I've been here for 6 years. I started as a house parent for the kids that are like 12, that it's called the house. And after a term and a half, I moved to class 1 and the SAN. And right now I'm just doing class 1.
And class 1, just explain the age range of class 1 for those who may not know.
Class 1 right now it's from 5 to 9 years old. I've had all the way up to 11, but it all depends of how many kids there are, if they're new, how much space is there in class 2. But usually it's from 5 to 11 to 9.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, so I'm James, the science teacher. I've been here the same as Monse, which I'm glad you heard first because I didn't know. Yes, I teach all the ages in science from kind of the class 1 all the way up to carriage kids. That's all I've ever done here.
Yeah, cool.
My name's Owen. I have done a few different things here. Mainly, my main sort of role here has been music teacher, and that's kind of been for about 7 or 8 years, getting on for 8 years. And that's kind of individual music lessons, but also group music lessons for the little kids and for the medium kids, and then kind of production lessons and theory lessons and history lessons, music history, and so on. I've also spent a bit of time doing house parenting. I've house parented sort of the SAN, but it wasn't really, there wasn't any borders then. Shack for a term, and I'm currently the house parent.
And maybe why don't you just explain the rough age ranges of SAN, Shack and things like that as well? Again, people don't know. So
SAN's the youngest age, so sort of 5 to 9-ish. Cottage is kind of, I mean, it varies again depending on what kids we have. The cottage is the next age up, and that can be sort of like 9, 10, 11-ish, I suppose. The house at the moment is about 10 to 12, just about 13. By the time they get to 13, they're normally ready for the shack, which is the sort of early teenage area, 13 to 14, maybe 15. And then the final area is the carriage, 15, 16, 17, maybe 18, which is the oldest area of the school.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm Sylvia, and I've been the English as an additional language teacher for 9 years now.
9 years. Wow, yeah.
I'm Andresa. I'm currently the class 2 teacher. So after they come from class 1 from Monse, so 9 to 13, 12, 13. Then they move to class 3. I've been here now for 2 years, but I worked here before, just before Sylvie came, as the house parent. So I was the house parent for 10 to 13 year olds, and then I came back as the SAN house parent, and now I'm class 2 teacher. So I floated a bit.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Maybe just, if there's any, maybe go around first of all, sort of in reflection to sort of how it was teaching in another or working in another environment, if you worked in another environment, and how it is at Summerhill as a whole, just to sort of think of it from that perspective.
Okay. Yeah, it's quite different. Like everyone knows, in a traditional school, you go in, you say, everyone, I don't know, we're going to do this. And the 20 kids you have in front of it, they do that. And they are following your lead. And yeah, you have the activities plan and everything. And here in Summerhill, you follow the kids in that aspect, as in if they're interested in something, if they come up with projects. Also, the teacher can come up with projects and ideas and say, oh, I was thinking about doing this, I don't know, something about artists. And some kids sign up for it, they join you. And they also can come up with, I really have this great idea and I want to make or build a house with carton, and they need a little bit of your support and help, so you help them. So it is quite different, and sometimes it's harder to teach here because you're waiting for them to come up with ideas, or sometimes, of course, they're playing, and depends on the weather as well. So it's really fun. But it's definitely, and the groups are a lot of smaller groups. Maybe if you're teaching reading, you have 2, maximum 3. So it's very personalized teaching.
Yeah, so I taught in colleges and universities before Summerhill. And really when I came to look when I had the job interview, it felt so much more like a university than a school or a college or anything, just because you had kind of the open space and the library, and kids were trusted, and it really, I mean, it's a great kind of environment to teach in. And the kids, you know, for the class 1, we kind of keep it really flexible, but as they get older and they kind of get a love and a passion of the subject, they really lead it. You know, you don't have to teach them, they want it, you know, so it's yeah, it's
And
great.
you teach, because you teach all the way through the ages.
Yeah.
Doing the science, you go all the way up to GCSE qualification.
Yeah. So yeah, and we've done a little bit of A levels as well, and you can really see how the kids take more and more responsibility every step, and as they take more responsibility as a teacher, you can do a little bit less as well. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I guess sort of trying to think of something new to add to that. I mean, that's not all that's true in music as well. I think it's not uncommon for the kids to sort of leave having done sort of first or second year kind of university level kind of stuff in music, as in, you know, sort of music, the level of music theory or the level of production they're doing, because they do just kind of run with it. As soon as they kind of get a passion for it and get kind of into it, they can just pick up pace so quickly. Because they sort of, depending on how long they've been here, they sort of tend to have very few negative associations with the classroom if they came here young enough. Meaning that the classroom is not this kind of complicated place to sort of be coerced into doing something. It literally is something they really want to get as much time in as possible. Sometimes it can be a bit more like, I'm sorry, I haven't got enough lessons to give you because I've got all these other people to teach as well. But that means the pace in which they can pick up stuff, which the pace at which they pick up stuff can be amazingly fast. In comparison to kind of like, you know, grinding away for years and years saying the same things. When I used to work in a college, yeah, so to compare, in a college situation, for example, you'd have to repeat the same kind of information so many times because they were just kind of, you're trying to kind of coerce them into sort of learning something or remembering something in many cases, as opposed to kind of here, where on my first day, I sort of sat by the mini ramp and a kid came down and was like, hey, can you show me the major scale? I've never been told any theory stuff. So I was like, yeah, sure. And just showed it to him. And he was like, thanks, that's great. And it's kind of like that simple interaction. It took 10 seconds, but I'd been literally trying to get the kids in the college I was working at terms just to remember the major scale. They're like, what was that again? You know? So that's fantastic. And the fact that you kind of have so much freedom to kind of like maneuver the curriculum around what the kids want to do is fantastic. And that can be difficult as well, because it means you have to sort of think on your feet a lot. You're not just following your term plan or whatever. But it can also be absolutely fantastic because you can kind of spend ages just digging into a really specific subject for ages and sort of sharing that kind of learning journey with the students, you know, especially the more advanced ones who might say like, oh, I want to learn loads about kind of granular synthesis. And I'm like, all right, let's find out what that is then. You know, that happens sometimes as well, which is fantastic.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, so
Yeah, I guess I'm going to try and address the issue of attendance, perhaps, because we do say, I mean, some people call it reverse psychology, that we tell the kids that they don't have to attend lessons, and I think we keep to it, but they do then somehow end up attending lessons. So I guess because they are just, you know, curious, and we say you don't have to, but then they do come to lessons. And for me, it was really surprising when I first came. I came from mainstream education, teaching kids actually the same thing, so English for those whose native tongue was different than English. And during the holidays, you know, they never wanted me to give them homework. And in my first holiday, we were just about to finish the first term, and then they were queuing up by my classroom, and they all wanted homework to take home. And I found that, you know, really surprising. And I'm not saying that that always happens. And obviously we have those kids who had a different experience in other schools, and then for a while they don't attend any lessons. But because we've got these small groups, and as you said, we could sort of play around with the syllabus as well a bit. So I think we can work on that and, you know, change it according to basically their needs. So yeah.
And but just quickly, I'll just come back to the fact that you're teaching international, the you know, and it's all ages as well.
Yes.
So because that topic, obviously, us being an international school as well, just anything interesting specifically about the topic side of it. I mean,
culturally, it's very diverse, and you know, I had groups where it was really interesting to even use the language English to then discover more about each other's culture. But then sometimes it's also quite funny when you end up with the teacher is of a different nationality than all the others, and then how to, you know, distract them and make sure that they are not using, let's say, Chinese within your lesson, because they can talk and, you know, because it's just easier to interact like that. But I think we just made use of that as well, so that one understood it better and then they could explain it to each other. But I mean, because we are really diverse, it was more of a mixed group most of the times. And I think it's really nice also that we are not strictly speaking class 1, class 2. We've got these classes, but they are, you know, within an age range, and it's quite nice that we can mix that up as well. So sometimes you do have younger kids with a little bit older students as well, and it's not an issue. And I think, or in most cases, you know, it works really very well because everybody's as if they were siblings a bit. And it's not that it's always easy to have your siblings, you know, nearby, but I think they make it work as well. So it's quite sweet. Yeah.
What I find very different here is that you can, your lessons actually always work because you plan something like in other schools, you plan something and it sounds really nice. And then you get there and out of the 25 students you have, there will be at least 3 that really don't want to do that. And they will make every effort to make your life hell and turn your lesson upside down and make it not work. So I found in other schools very frustrating for the kids as well, the kids who are interested. It's very hard because sometimes they want to do something and there are those ones that are trying to kind of make it not happen. And I think as a teacher, it's really frustrating. And for the students who are interested, it's very frustrating as well. Because no matter what you do, if a child doesn't want to do something, they won't. And that disturbs the other ones who do. And here, because you only get the ones that really want to be there, it always works. So you plan something, and they're always very keen on doing it. And sometimes, of course, they complain, they are kids. So they say like, oh, I don't want to do that. But they end up doing it because they are there because they want to. And I say, if you don't want to do it, you can leave. You don't need to be here. And they always say, okay, I'll do it.
I'll just quickly add something to that. I had quite a lovely little situation when I was running the studio quite a while back, where we were doing a rap, and there was a group of kids, and one kid was quite new to the school, obviously just coming from the state system, and was sort of came and was sort of being really sort of rebellious within the class and that sort of thing. And I sort of said, well, you know, if you want to stay, then focus and put energy into it. If you don't want to be here, you can go. And there's a sort of sudden moment you could see it's sort of like, okay, I've come to a class, I'm being a bit outrageous because I felt I should do, but actually, so there's this moment you can see him processing and going, I actually really want to be here, and then just a really simple sort of thing of just suddenly like, oh, okay, actually that's what I'm, you know, oh, okay, and it's quite nice, sort of interesting.
Yeah, I wanted to add, we as teachers have the freedom to teach, to invent our curricula, to do whatever we want in our classrooms, and that is a great thing of being a teacher in the school.
Yeah. Well, I guess often it's sort of connected with the GCSE ones. You'll be connected to a syllabus of the GCSE it's chosen or something like that. But you have the flexibilities around that as well, depending on how and that sort of thing, I guess, with the smaller numbers that were said earlier, sort of thing as well. I
found when doing the teacher training, we were taught kind of lots of ways to make the lessons engaging and fun, you know, which isn't a bad thing. But when I came here and was doing GCSE lessons, I went into like a second year GCSE group I hadn't taught before. And you know, I thought, well, we'll make it fun and engaging. We made got jelly beans and made DNA ladders. And the kids just sat there like, we'll eat the jelly beans, but just teach us how to pass the exam. You know, they didn't want it. They just wanted to pass. They just wanted to know how to pass. So yeah, that was a quick learning curve.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Yeah, I've heard similar things as well, actually. But get the job done.
Yeah,
we just want to learn. We're here to learn.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so how about thinking about general sort of community life, sort of living within the community of kids? Obviously, we've got the meeting process. We can come back to that a little bit as well, sort of thing. But maybe just sort of as a living within the community of Summerhill, sort of thing.
It is really fun, and it's a time of adjustment. I remember when I was new, I was playing with the 2 girls that were 8 and 9, and we were on the trampoline here on the sand field. And then a guy that it was 12, he came and said 5 minutes. And 5 minutes later, the 9-year-old said, "We've got to go." And I was like, "No, but we just came here. Like, come on, give us more time." And the girl of 9 was like, "Come on, there's another trampoline there. Let's just go." Like, but he's not gonna, he's just sitting down, he's not using it. So it was more frustrating for me to follow the rules than a 9-year-old that's been here for like 3 years. So I'm like, of course, yeah, now I get it. But at that time, I'm like, come on.
Why can't we just do it?
Yeah.
Don't interrupt our game.
Yeah. There was a similar thing. I think we're sort of like hanging out in the evening playing games or something in the staff room, and they're kind of like, some kids had to go because it was their bedtime, and it was just kind of, no, it's our bedtime, we have to leave this area, that's the rules. And I think another newish staff was kind of like, "Oh, but surely we can make the exception for this time, it should be a bit of play." And they're like, "No, you don't make the exception, the meeting does. We cannot say, like, you can stay here for longer, it's not our decision. It's our room, but the community has decided this is the rules, and that's, so the staff have no power to sort of say, "Oh yeah, come on, stay for
It's okay, yeah.
Although we could do, but we'd get brought up and fined probably. But
yeah.
so yeah, that can be interesting when you realize you're not the ultimate authority. I mean, in some areas, obviously you are, safety, safeguarding, that sort of thing, of course you have to be, but in terms of day-to-day sort of living, you're not the ultimate authority in the school. It's kind of like the meeting, and that's kind of, it seemed to make a lot of sense to me. I really enjoyed it when I first turned up, but it is a bit weird to sort of think of as well, you know. You're an autonomous sort of person, but also a community member, and have to obey that and sort of feed into that as well, you know. Feed into the meeting, feed into the laws. I think it's great. I think it's really, really good. But lots of my friends think I'm kind of mad for sort of like choosing to sort of, you know, live under this kind of like community. But it's fantastic. It's wonderful and heartwarming when you're in it.
But at the same time, I feel like you can focus on what's important, because I always felt in other schools that I was kind of a policeman, reinforcing laws and saying like, no, you shouldn't do that, and solving conflicts and all that. And here I don't have that job, so I can focus on other things, and I can pay more attention to the kids instead of being always stressed about, oh, they shouldn't be doing that, they shouldn't be doing that, and being like the police.
Yeah, I love that. I love ombudsman because of that. It's like there's a conflict, call an ombudsman, and I keep doing certain things that I'm doing, and they will help you so much.
Yeah, that use of ombudsman, obviously coming up earlier in the conversations earlier, sort of thing. But it's just interesting that you know, the instantaneous of being able to have a situation where someone comes in to discuss an issue when there's a problem, sort of thing, and then the opportunity to then take it to the meeting afterwards. Yeah. And I guess as a team of staff, sort of thing, you know, the way that we as a team of staff work, staff meetings and bits and pieces like that. I think it's often something that I often think that it's not really discussed much at Summerhill, but I think, or not at Summerhill, but often in talks, people want to know about the philosophy of something on bits and pieces like that. But to me, the working group of the staff and how it works is something that's really powerful and important. I just wonder if there's anything around that you want to mention or talk about, sort of thing.
I suppose it's kind of the sharing of practice. It's, you know, we have the literacy and numeracy meetings, and even if kids that you don't actually teach, you get to really know in depth kind of where they're at. So when they do come into your classroom, you're already kind of aware of their kind of strengths and weaknesses. And I think that's like another part of community life is, you know, you really get to know the kids individually, you know, and then you can really kind of work the lessons, you know, and you can get, you can get so much, you know, it's really good.
So just to sort of mention, we get together as staff meetings, we get together twice a week, and it's to do all sorts of bits and pieces of jobs, really. So some of it is very administrative and all sorts of things like that, but then sometimes it is exactly as you said, James, that we're discussing the kids in different, you know, just to sort of be aware of how things are going.
I guess to a certain extent, although we are colleagues, but we also become friends, you know, we do live together. So it would be really difficult if it was the other way around and we didn't like each other. But, you know, of course, you got some colleagues you are sort of closer with because you end up talking a lot more. But even with those who don't talk that much, you get on very well, I think. I mean, we are very lucky because we do. We have to, with it, just like the kids do, don't they? So because we are one community, and I guess you know, a little bit from my perspective, I had to be away for a little while, and you know, just that support that I got from my colleagues and from the whole community as such, of course, that makes the whole working environment as well easier to work in, and supporting each other. And you know, we can just pop into each other's classroom and say, what would you do and how can we? So we get sometimes, so to say, instant support in challenging teaching related problems as well, you know, or even maybe it is from time to time a little bit tricky living together within a community, and you know, just that companionship as well. I would perhaps say that we can share and discuss that, and I think that helps us be and work together as a strong team. So yeah. And we respect each other, I think, you know, we try and work together really. So.
And then, well, sorry, just want to add.
No, I'm not going to. Also, we've got a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. We've got
Yeah,
some bits up here. Yeah, amazing. Good.
I would
Yeah.
like to quickly address the one on the top from Daniel, I think.
Yeah.
Because, he was asking why we had to offer, or we were offering support for international kids, if I understand it correctly. And that's because we do tend to carry on and get them to different GCSE. I mean, can it?
Yeah,
Is
but
it
for
this
the
one?
other
Yes.
people that can't see it.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
So if kids are immersed in an English school 24/7, why do you think there is a need for an English class? Won't they naturally learn English just by the social interaction?
So that means that they can talk to one another, and yes, they pick up English very quickly. And I don't ever say that I teach them English from scratch and they wouldn't learn English if it wasn't for me. But I do help them, you know, fix grammatical errors and you know, improve their English generally, and then they can join, and they do enjoy, not just join the students from the beginning, or the others to be able to take science, GCSEs and so on. But it might take them a little longer to then actually take a GCSE in it, and then I can perhaps have them on that journey. And while they do tend to go on and maybe stay in the UK and then go to college or university, you know, so that has to get to, so to say, an academic standard to a certain extent, we could say that, and helping them on that journey and getting that extra support, I think, helps them. So that's why they get English as an additional language support.
They need the qualification as well, don't they, in many cases?
Yeah, now with the visa situation and everything changing, so they do tend to take international language exams as well. So I prepare them for that.
So it sort of almost just sort of goes along. Obviously, that other one happens naturally, of course it does. Yeah. But just that extra little bit, sort of, and then going to that extra level as well.
Write in English as well, not just talk to one another. So
yeah. Okay, so how do children transfer from having as an authority into having authority for themselves in life?
I think I can address this one. I think it's to do with the perception that the school community is an authority that's equivalent to an adult authority. So like in a sort of normal school, the kids are kind of, you know, they have to do the things they have to do. They try and get away with as much as they can because they don't have a lot of autonomy to use their free time as they wish. So the adults have to kind of quite often be telling off, don't do that, stop this, no, do this. It's a lot of time managing because they fundamentally, a lot of them don't want to be there as much as they are, even though they might fundamentally want to learn at some level. The school authority, the school community, being as an authority, is a very different thing to that. It's something which they interact with, they have autonomy within, they can sort of influence decisions, they can drop in to the meeting and sort of like put in their thoughts and that sort of thing. It's also something they learn to live as a part of. It's not like they are subjects and then the community is on top of them telling them how to sort of behave. They are within this ecosystem. And a lot of the time they have quite a lot of freedom day to day to do whatever they do. And it's not like the sort of, if you're being, difficult with people and sort of causing trouble or whatever, then you will see the authority of the community via the ombudsman, via the meeting. But if not, then they can kind of, it's their life becomes day to day just about self-governance, and they're governing themselves whether they go to lessons or not and how they spend their free time and all these kind of things. So actually living under the school's community as an authority is very similar to living under the wider a wider community as an authority, for example, a town, a country, that sort of thing. It's you're within your decisions day to day, you're autonomous and free, but you have to sort of also be aware that there is a set of rules that kind of are over the top in order to sort of help society kind of like function, you know. So they go out into the outside world and normally deal with it very, very well, you know. They're sort of very, very comfortable to kind of like manage their time, manage their resources. They understand why some things are allowed and some things aren't allowed, you know. So the transition is very smooth usually. They gain the authority for themselves here in a mini format in the school community, and it's just a model for the wider, a less scary and more sort of like, you know, learning environment, supportive version of the wider of living, you know, in the wider community outside of Summerhill as well. So it's not something which they lose when they leave here. It's a small model for the rest of life.
Okay, so can you say more about how a situation might go if an adult feels that they have to intervene because of a safety issue? How does that go? How does that get processed? The fact that suddenly someone gets to make a decision that overrules others.
I think that we never overrule the school rules. But for example, when we're in the pool, the lifeguards are the ones that are in safety of the kids. So if a kid is making too much, I mean, it's playing too rough or it's doing something, we have the authority to say, get out of the pool, and we'll discuss it in the meeting.
Yeah.
But we do have that power from the meeting to do that. So we're not overruling, and I can't think of a situation that we will do
it's
something.
true that occasionally that, you know, that for example, something will come in, often it will come in through government restriction where we then have to impose it and that we do then. And generally that's, you know, it's not something that, you know, just sort of needs to be done. So you're absolutely right. As soon as swimming pool safety, it's not something that can be democratically decided. It's, you know, because we're a school, we have to tick those boxes to make sure that we're sort of.
And for example, fire practices twice a term. Just like any other school does, just to make sure everyone's aware. And no one can, you know, a kid, you know, a boisterous kid or sort of a kid that's just come from state school might say, I don't want to do a fire practice. And that's the point where we have to say, you have to do a fire practice. If we have a fire, then we have to say that
it's a requirement of the school,
you have to be able to get out of the house in time, in a timely manner and safely. That's where you might overrule, but it's literally just in that situation where it's like it would be absurd to have a situation where it's like, oh yeah, he didn't get out of the fire, he didn't get out of the house in the fire because he chose not to do it. That's our responsibility, to teach them to sort of keep themselves safe in these difficult in these moments that are wider, you know.
But it's like, is it internet safety, online safety, for example, online safety chats have to be delivered at Summerhill School, and everybody has to attend them. Staff and pupils have to go through online safety chats because it's a requirement, and we want to be doing that. And so things like that you know, that it's important they then just sort of come in. Sort of.
But there's not a huge amount in the day-to-day running of the community. There's not a huge amount of this. People are just aware that there are things like fire safety, internet safety, pool safety. Just stuff where at some point suddenly the alarm bell goes and we're the ones who are responsible. We have to take them to hospital, we have to fix the broken leg or whatever it is. Anything which kind of can involve that sort of moment, the adults are responsible, and therefore we need to make sure we tick the boxes, both for the safety of the kids and for the adhesion to the government sort of laws and rules. But outside of that, once you get outside of that, then we don't put our authority or overrule on top of things very often at all, you know. Maybe if someone's like poking someone with a really sharp stick really hard, we might say, stop that, you idiot, you know, but that's kind of just
it's not okay.
But there's something extremely dangerous. I think we'll stop, but we'll stop, and an older kid will also stop them.
Exactly, that's important.
Whoever sees it,
whoever sees it, really.
I think it's important to say that we don't have adults supervising the garden and the woods and anything, because sometimes many people ask me that. So like when they're playing outside, the adults are not outside looking on like what they are doing, if they're safe, if they're getting hurt. But the other kids, as soon as someone gets hurt, someone will come shouting and get someone. And if they see someone fighting in a dangerous way or even fighting, they will stop them and help them find an ombudsman. But we'll tell them to stop, not only us. But we would do it. That's not overruling.
As humans, not as sort of authority figures, but just as well, in
If
normal
someone
humans.
needs help, we'll help.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
something that when a new kid comes in, I mean, this is not safety, but if another kid from class 1 says tidy up, they will look at me as the teacher of like, I only will do it if you tell me. And then I have to work with them and say, everyone in the community, you should listen to the others. They are right as well. So if someone tells you, stop poking someone with that stick, not just because it's a kid, you don't listen. So that's something that they learn with the time in Summerhill. Yeah. There's no hierarchy. It's not like I only do what the teacher says.
And I guess it's really important as well that they learn that and they do tell each other. So it can also be not a dangerous issue, but something that is annoying to you. And that I love it when kids get to that point where I might do something and they tell me off because, I don't want to be intruding or, well, I tend not to, but it can happen. And then they do tell me, stop it, Sylvia. And I like it because we are partners in it and they understand that they can do that too. So it's nice when they get there.
I remember getting told off a lot, turning up 5 minutes to a lesson, late to teach a lesson. As the teacher, I think I actually got a strong warning in the meeting actually once for turning up a little bit late to a lesson. I quite like that one. What is a literacy and numeracy meeting?
Gently started.
Go on, Jess.
Sorry.
Well, I do miss the literacy one sometimes. So is it like twice a term we try and meet, have a literacy and numeracy meeting, sometimes once or twice a term, depending on the number of kids. And really it's just to discuss where all the kids are at in terms of their literacy level and numeracy level. And that can, we just discuss it, don't we, really? And then if there's anybody that we think might need help, we can discuss ways to maybe help them or to offer them assistance. If they're a bit scared of the classroom, we can kind of maybe offer them some one-to-one lessons, or it's just to have a gauge of where the kids are at in the community, because everybody will access learning at a different stage.
I guess because there's non-compulsion, that's exactly it. And what often happens that I find really interesting about the numeracy and literacy meetings is that often house parents will have a lot of input because the teachers may not have actually seen a child specifically in the lesson, but they will have a lot of input that, that child's reading in their rooms all the time and things like that. So, and I think because there's lots of different departments of lots of different ages within the school, but there's a real finger on the pulse then of how everything is going. And that's another thing I think is really interesting about I find it very interesting, in those times, just sort of hearing things about a child because they just might not do much work with you because of that choice. It's not that all children go to all of us as teachers. That's not always the case. So sometimes someone won't know much about what that child's doing, and yet one teacher will say that child's doing so much in the woodwork or art room or in English as a foreign language, so you gain those pictures, and it's quite nice in that way.
It's like putting this jigsaw puzzle together about a person in that aspect. And I think it also shows that it's not that we don't care, and therefore you decide if you want to, you come to lessons or you don't, but we do monitor it, and we are passionate about our jobs, and we do know that most people would want to have some kind of outcome at the end of their basically secondary studies, I guess, and that is a way for us to monitor that as well and help them on the way. So
also it satisfies the potentially a kid might not be able to be getting the most out of the community or be able to use ombudsman or be able to use the meeting because they're nervous about their level of English, for example, or whatever it might be, or they can't, other kids are maybe sort of like taking advantage of the fact they can't count their money very well, little things like that. But it was also making sure they have the fundamental tools to sort of navigate this community appropriate to the age group they're in. Literacy is not limiting their ability to interact with the community.
And for lessons, and for lessons, because you can have kids that go through Summerhill and don't attend any lessons, but if their reading and writing is really strong, then you know that that's probably like a conscious choice. They're happy where they're at. But if they're going through and not attending lessons because they're scared of other kids, you know, being a comparison because their English isn't as good, then it's offering that support for them.
Yeah, and the reasons why people won't be turning up.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's scars from previous schooling systems, and you sort of think, well, let's just leave them now for 2 years, or I won't say 5 years. It's never very rarely that case, but you leave them for a period of time because you know that they're just sort of, you know, just relaxing and finding it in their own time. And then sometimes you look and sort of go, okay, maybe they need support.
that's time for a little bit of chat.
Yeah.
That's
Cool.
a good question there about our timetable. Would you
The first one here, curious about the structure of teaching lessons. Do the teachers move about the community all day or hang out in their classroom waiting for interested students to show up? Are lessons pre-planned and students commit to coming in advance?
It's very nuanced. And well, the last bit is the truth is the timetable is relatively similar to it in most other schools. There's a pre-made timetable at the beginning of the term made by Cynthia and Henry, amongst others.
Team timetable.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So the kids, to give you, to sum it up, so they come back on Thursday. On the Friday, we have a meeting where all the staff introduce themselves and what they're sort of, not what they're going to be teaching, but sort of just give an overview to the kids, especially for the new ones, of who they are and that sort of thing. And then we all go off to our various areas, our classrooms, and the kids spend the following 2 hours or so walking around, going room by room, chatting to the teacher, getting more information on exactly what's being offered, and asking maybe if they want, asking if something can be offered specific that they would like. And here they can ask maybe an individual or whatever they need, you know. And then the teachers then make their judgment on how they're going to place their classes and arrange their classes, and then pass that information to team timetable, who create a set timetable. Now the timetable can change throughout the term. That's, of course, you know, there's always flexibility, but broadly speaking, that is the timetable for the rest of the term. And within that, it probably differs quite a lot from area to area in terms of the last part of the question. Generally speaking, yeah, I'm in my class. Well, when I was a teacher, music teacher, I'm in my classroom pretty much all day. If the kids don't come after 10 minutes into the lesson, then we tend to say that's kind of like you're free to sort of then go off and make a cup of tea or whatever and come back down. But I'm always around my area more or less during the day, and the kids come to the music areas to do music. In terms of pre-planned, it depends on the area. Obviously, individuals, you can be very flexible. They can turn up and say, I feel like doing this today, or whatever it might be. But within a sort of a group lesson, even if it's a small group lesson, like I say, music history, there is going to be, you know, my lessons for the term will be pre-planned. And if one comes but 2 others don't, then it can be a bit annoying, because you decide then, well, do I do this lesson and then recap with the next guy's next? You know, sometimes that won't matter. Sometimes it will matter, depending on the content of the lesson. So you just have to make a bit of a judgment. But generally speaking, by the time kids get to that sort of age, by the time they get to the point where they've decided to commit to some kind of curriculum or syllabus, then they know the score. They know that if they miss a lesson, they're going to miss one. So they tend to turn up the whole time. When that, sometimes they don't, because they're not ready quite to commit, but they sort of, maybe they'll sign up for, let's say, a qualification, but then they do 3 lessons and they sort of drop off. But then we'd just recognize maybe they're not quite ready to do that, this level of intensity. And this was a first practice to see what it's like. And then maybe a few times later, they re-sign up for the GCSE again or whatever. And this time they're like, okay, I understand what it's about. I know I've got to commit. I know if I just miss every other lesson, then it's going to be really hard for me to understand what's going on. So this is part of their sort of self-governance and self kind of ability to sort of, you know, schedule their own time and their learning sort of efficiently and effectively. So they tend, yeah, as I say, they tend to turn up once they've committed to doing a syllabus. And as ever, we're watching, all the staff are watching. So if someone's consistently doing a bad routine, then we'd be like, this person needs some support, or a little chat or whatever, or a different class maybe sometimes, or individuals. So it's always extremely dynamic and very nuanced from child to child. But fundamentally, that's kind of the way it works.
What is kind of great though, that we do tend to make a new timetable for every term. So let's say, as you said, someone signed up and they did not attend, or it was sporadic. The teachers can also make the decision based on the initial conversation that, okay, but this term you are joining the group, and you will be able to have some individual lessons with me as well, to sort of catch up and be part of that group, or perhaps do it in some other ways as well. But I think that's really amazing that we end up doing or creating a new timetable for every term. I don't think many others do that. And For my area, I would usually prepare several different topics and they can choose from those, but it's not that it wouldn't get recycled, you know, you will end up doing the other one once, but on the day you could choose that. And I think they like that. They do tend to tell me as well what topics they are interested in, and you know, as long as it's all in English and I've got exercises and topics to work on, I think it doesn't really matter what we actually do, as long as they get something out of it and their English knowledge sort of deepens and develops. But I think it's quite nice that we can also personalize, at least with some subjects, their lessons. And in that case, in that respect, it is pre-planned, but also quite spontaneous at times. So I had lessons on Summerhill with new students. Okay, so let's go around and learn the words here, you know, or learn the classrooms and the teachers and the subjects that way. So you don't have to stay in the classroom, but I do tend to just stay in also my classroom and wait for interested kids to come, as you put it. So yeah.
With the little ones, we also do a little sign up where they tell me if they want to do IT or if they want to do science, so the outside. But I also tell them I will offer always like English, maths, and sometimes we offer drama, dance, different types. This time it's Meet the Artist, where we see all the artist people, or we're visiting a country and we'll see a little bit of geography. They do sign up for them. They are little, so they're not, I mean, to keep track of the time and the day and everything, of course, we don't expect them to do. So I do remind them a lot. And the class one is quite a busy, so it's very rare that I'm alone in the classroom. So I always have kids around, and I do tell them, oh, right now it's, I don't know, geography. Do you want to do the lesson? And sometimes the kids come in and I'm like, oh, it's your lesson. Do you want it? No, I already had planned to play Lego and do this activity with my friend, and that's fine as well. And they feel really free to say, not today, but I'll come the next time. So it's really free, but it is a busy area. So it's nice, but I do pre-plan the lessons. Yeah.
It's interesting also how, you know, with the timetable, quite a lot of times you'll have children who will sign up for something and actually sort of think, no, actually, I don't want to do that anymore, or come halfway through and sort of think, actually, is it okay if I start that now, and whatever else. If anything, that where there's not so much flexibility is if you're doing, when you're doing obviously GCSEs, you can't have someone just go, can I just join the year 2 GCSE? Well, no, because that's going to, you know, put a lot more pressure on the teacher or the learning situation, where then they would start with that. Seems quite obvious, but you know, but generally that's sort of.
I mean, in science, you know, I found that not always, but sometimes you'll get a kid that will say, I really want to do science, but I've only got a year left, you know, and this isn't the timetable, but they'll go into a year 2 and a year 1 group, you know, and sometimes you can get, give me somebody, got through the whole GCSE in, you know, 3 terms and hadn't had any background in it. So, so there is flexibility. And for like students at AL, they've worked on science and then come to you and gone through their projects and corrected things, and it's good.
So how long did it take you to adjust to the Summerhill community rules, and what was your feeling transitioning from other schools where you have an automatic authority as opposed to kids having the majority vote over an issue?
It didn't take me long to adjust to the community rules. They all make a lot of sense. They're sort of, not all of them, some of them are quite specific to situations that have come up. You know, sometimes you can go through the law book, which I do a lot of, because I've been, just community-wise, I've been given the role of being law bookkeeper. So most laws are very sort of, they make sense, but some of them you're like, what's that one about? And it's because some specific thing happened once, you know, on the trampoline. It's like, this is just to cover the base there. But so no, most of them make a lot of sense. The point of having it and discussing it and talking about it regularly is the kids kind of really understand and sort of believe in the laws and trust in them to keep them safe and keep their days kind of like operating fluidly. So it's an unbelievably important thing to have, but it's also kind of, a lot of it's just like fairly common sense. It's just kind of ways that just kind of like govern so that everyone can use a trampoline throughout a day comfortably and that sort of thing. So it wasn't a great big shock to sort of turn up and suddenly have to follow these guidelines. I mean, if I was in a normal school, I wouldn't use my phone during lessons anyway. So the fact that when I'm here, I'm not allowed to screen during the day, it's like, well, it's cool, you know, it makes sense. I'm not going to use my phone other than maybe messaging another teacher to say, yeah, something to do with work, you know. So there's not a great degree of transition time. And sort of living in the community in the evenings, it's such a unique place. It's so different to any other place. It was just exciting and vibrant. So I was far from being like, wow, this is weird. It was like, wow, this is great. You know, like in the evenings, there's like these little guys who are kind of like saying, hey, do you want to watch Star Wars? And, you know, do you want to play Minecraft? And it's kind of suddenly you have this really nice social interaction. What was the other part of the question? It was about the adult authority thing.
Automatic authority you have.
Yeah,
that
it
you
was very relieving, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think people
Very
really
relieving,
want
because
it.
I don't want that authority. I
Yeah.
don't want to have the need. I mean, I've
Yeah.
come from some very difficult schools and schools of kids who have kind of been out of prison and that sort of thing. So I don't want to have to shout down some scary teenager because they're being crazy. You know, like I have no desire ever to sort of want to impress that authority. If I don't need to, of course, I'll have to if you need to. So coming here, it's like I don't need to do that really very often at all. And you can pass it on to the ombudsman, and who are fantastic. And it's the kids don't respond strangely to me because there's not the adult child divide. They'll move across, and there's the ombudsman is maybe a peer who is maybe a bit older and a bit cooler, and they like that person. So the ombudsman's then saying, don't do that. And they're like, okay, cool, I won't, you know. It's much more, it feels much more human, much more fluid, much more relaxing, you know. I never had that stressful feeling of kind of like having three boisterous people being out of control, and I'm the one who's got to sort of like stop them from doing it, you know. It's like, so yeah, so it's fantastic. And the last bit, the vote wise, I mean, like generally speaking in the meeting is very sensible as well. Like if you come up with sometimes there's disagreement over maybe like what the fine should be or what the law should be wording wise, but in terms of I've never had a situation where I've kind of like thought as an adult this should happen and the meeting all vote the opposite, you know. Maybe there's a more lenient fine and I'm like, oh, that kid should have really gotten, you know, something a bit heavier for that because that was a bit off what they did. But no, not sort of, I've never been sort of felt betrayed by the vote. You know, the community is very, very realistic and very, very sensible and responsible.
Yeah, I remember at college having to kind of stop the whole lesson because somebody was wearing a hat in the class, and you're not allowed to wear a hat in class. So I had to tell him not to, and he wouldn't. So we had to call the head of the department.
Oh, no.
And you think this is ridiculous. You know what I mean? it's not stopping him from learning. You know what I mean? So here it's quite liberating. I mean,
Yes.
the rules are there if they need to be there, and they're important.
And kids really respect your place. I felt that really cool when I first came 12 years ago. That like I had my room. I was a house parent, but there is the house room where we had games and sometimes they were doing something that like wasn't okay. And I said, if you're doing that, you cannot stay in this room. And then they would just stop straight away. And I'm like, wow, I never had that much authority in my whole life. I say something once and they do stop. Or they leave if they're not happy with your decision. It's your room. They have to follow your rules in a way. And then of course they can always bring you up if you're being not to be abusive, but I wasn't.
What's almost quite nice about that, it wasn't because you had authority, it's because they respected you as people. And that's also, that's really sincere. It's like, oh, actually, that's, oh, wait a minute.
And it was a great one in front of an inspector, actually, during an ISI inspection. And it was a similar thing. They also have respect for the meeting and for the process. Like a kid was playing with me and trying to take my iPad, but it was fun. It was clearly fun. It wasn't like they're being sort of horrible in any way, but they were like playing this game and I was like, stop it, you know. And it was the third to stop it. It was kind of getting a bit annoying. So I was like, stop it, I'll bring you up. And instantly they let go of life. It was like instantly, okay, stopped. The game stopped. And the inspector saw that. And it's a great sort of great indicator to them that the power of the meeting, that the respect the kid has for the meeting. They thought they were carrying on playing. They probably didn't think I was getting annoyed, but I had that ability to be able to say, I will go to the community with this if you stop it because it's bothering me. So that's great as well, you know.
But what's really lovely about that is it's not of fear of the meeting. It's actually them realizing that you're being serious, and that it's not a game. And it's actually no, Owen doesn't like this now, so I won't do it. So it's not necessarily because of meeting and fear of, okay, I'm going to be brought up. It's more, okay, he's being serious now, and that's that relationship thing is something that's really interesting as well. That comes from that perspective. How to tell the difference when a child doesn't want to study a certain subject because they really don't like it, or there are other reasons like finding something too difficult to understand. for example, or not feeling confident enough?
That's a really good question. It's to explain it, I think, is a big answer, a long answer, and specific to different kids. It's something you get a feel for as a teacher, obviously, and get a feel for as a teacher at Summerhill. A lot of collaboration between the staff, a lot of talking, a lot of, and between sort of house parents as well. You can obviously sense various things, body language, you hear conversations between other kids, that sort of thing. Interactions, the way they interact with the classroom, the way they hang around on the peripheries of a lesson, whether they sort of come into the classroom and then don't, and then leave very quickly or whatever. Many different varieties, but it's something which you sort of learn, not just in Summerhill, in other education as well, but sort of, you know, as a teacher, learn to kind of identify in a child, and quite, I'd say quite, we could do it quite quickly these days. There's sort of many flavors of sort of anxiety that's around lessons, but they're kind of quite, they sort of offer these kind of clues that you can kind of identify quite quickly. But there's a lot of them, I suppose, so maybe.
Also, we talk so much at the staff meetings about the kids, so it will be like exchanging ideas. What happens in your classroom? Oh, okay, because I've seen this in my classroom. Maybe it's this kind of problem.
Yeah.
And we always come up, maybe talk to a house parent that it's not a teacher, so it might be more like closer relationship, or maybe it could be another teacher, but we always have that conversation.
Sometimes like another teacher will say, oh, there's no problem with that in my lesson at all. And then like, okay, cool. So that's clues.
Yeah,
that's clues.
gives you a clue that then it might be the topic specifically or something of the way,
the
way it's happening
way
or something
the
like that.
structured or
And with older
Those
kids,
nuances.
sometimes we can talk to the kid as well.
Yeah.
If we identify something, and we can have a conversation with the kid.
And I think also with the older kids, because they've got the careers after Summerhill advisors, so the careers advisors, so they all have individual careers advisors, and then they get to talk to them and find out what they're interested in. If they're not attending science, but they want to be a vet, then that'll get fed back, and then you can maybe offer the science teacher can offer some one-to-one lessons, or to try and get them to understand what they need, and so they get a lot of support, you know.
I mean, I guess we have such a broad situation of whether it's scars, lack of confidence that from previous systems, but sometimes it's pressure from parents we've had as well, of that whether the child's coming because they actually want to come, or if they've got pressure from home to be going to lessons and bits and pieces. So the emotional connection to the decision, to a certain extent, you can often sense that is what those nuances.
Yeah,
you can sort of sense
you
quite well, and with the communication of the team, as we said. Yeah. Oh, we've only got 1 minute left. You see, we just get lost and keep chatting. Okay, so please one more in. Yes, we got this. Do you feel to be paid well enough to make a living on your salary, or do you view working at Summerhill as a valuable experience which is only possible for a limited period of your professional life?
It's quite without giving too much away or whatever, like it's by the time you factor in that we don't pay rent and get fed, then
no internet, no
internet,
don't pay
no gas, no electricity,
bills,
so that's
something
something
like that.
if you live here full time, we're supported very well. If we other people have houses in the holiday time, but other people don't. I don't currently have a house because it made no sense to just live in a house for like 3 weeks a year, because I go on holiday and stuff in the holiday times and so on. So in that sense, it's definitely possible to spend this time saving. But the bottom one's interesting, which is only possible for a limited period of your professional life. It's in theory, no, but it's a very sort of like amazing, wonderful island-like little existence. I've often said, like, I wish I had like 2 lifetimes, one that I could just like sort of take over here and enjoy it, and support people and live in this great community, and another one where I go and do a master's and kind of like become a, I don't know, whatever, something else, explore like adult life in a sort of a city or whatever. So I think it's different for everyone. I think for me personally, being at some point, it's like a sort of, maybe the first term would be like 6, 8, 10 years, something like that. And then it's time, then I'd want to go off and sort of, and maybe have a family of my own or whatever, who knows what later brings, maybe coming back, doing some other role or whatever. But it's fantastic. It's just a shame that you can't sort of do just live here for your whole life and also do everything else. It's but you know, it's because it's the way it works. I don't think Summerhill would be the same if it was in the middle of London, you know, so you couldn't necessarily combine the two. So it's kind of how I feel.
Anyone else? Because from different angles, you two with families as well. Obviously, you've got families, and both of you are here, and your kids are here. So that's also just sort of get another perspective on it. I guess.
I think it'd be interesting. Yeah, for me, I think, you know, after working in various other areas, it gets to a point where you realise that I mean, we need money, but you've also got to have a balance and a quality of life, and for me, that's what Summerhill gives me. There's not loads of wages, but we've got a really good balance, a really good quality of life, and it's a really nice environment to live and be in. So you can still save, you know, so it's the money's kind of irrelevant actually.
I wanted to add a little bit that I think the limited period is more about your plans, as you were saying, and not really
it's more specific to me,
for necessary for financial reasons. It's really, I think in both of your cases, it's really valuable and very useful that you actually were here before you had the kids and before they then ended up joining you, so that you are again here, or you are here now, and then the kids could join at school, because you do have a different understanding of, I guess, how to be parents as well as teachers and just a community member. And I think it's really important that it wasn't the other way around, or simultaneously, you know, just happening at the same time. So you both benefited probably from being here as a teacher or house parent first, and then knowing how it worked. And I think I assume it's still quite difficult having your own kids here at the same time. It's perhaps a little bit challenging, but I don't know. So, and I guess the why you would leave, it depends on your plans, whether you know, you wouldn't have a family here, you know, even if you had a partner, because you are focused on all these other kids who are here, and we don't end up having a baby here at school as well, you know, 5 is the age, and so you would go away and you know, you would live your separate private life and then have kids, and then maybe at another time come back afterwards. Or
She just described my life.
Sorry, yes, I did actually.
But like answering, it's like you can make a living here. And yes, but then you have other plans. When I was here before, then my daughter was born here. In fact, we had a baby around just for a few months. And then I left because I couldn't have a baby here and work here. The baby as part of the community. And when my kids were of school age, I would come back. So I did when my son turned 5. And I plan to leave one day so they can have the true Summerhill experience with my mother. So far they're little, so it's fine.
I always wanted to leave when Elaine got in the house, but she's gone in the house.
Okay, I've just seen. I've just seen. There's one more little question. It's quite a nice one to end it off. So, would you, as a teacher, ever go back to teaching in ordinary schools? And if you did, what would you take back from your learning at Summerhill?
I went back after the first 2.5 years. And I don't know, it was some things I have to say I enjoy teaching, even in other schools. It's something that I really like, and I enjoyed it. But some things were really challenging. And this thing about being a police, I hated it. Why did I go back to that? But I thought for 7 years after I went and I came back, and I was thinking some things I liked, some things I didn't. But I don't know. Living here at the moment, maybe I wouldn't go back to teaching, but I think because I'm tired of teaching from other schools, not necessarily because I'm here, and to teaching in other schools, because here it is a different experience. When I left my last school, I said, I'm going to Summerhill now. If I wasn't going to Summerhill, probably I would change my career. But what to take from here, I don't know.
Everything.
It is an experience that you take with you. But even before coming here the first time, I think I was very open, like with my classroom, and would do like kind of a small democracy in my classroom. So it was, I always felt my classrooms were a bit different from the other classrooms in the school. Sometimes we had our own rules, and the kids were very aware that like inside the classroom it's this way, and outside we have to follow whatever. You cannot wear a hat, but inside it's fine. So I was always like the rule breaker a bit with your kids in the school, but it always worked. The schools always said, as long as it's in your classroom and it's fine outside, it's fine. So I kept on doing that.
I think we really love Summerhill, but it's not that Summerhill is the only school. In fact, we are happy that there is a community, and even now, you know, that other professionals are from other schools, and we are generally, I think, very supportive of, you know, and want to learn more about other methods, or, you know, other schools and how everybody is doing, you know. And of course, whether it's ordinary or mainstream or in any other way special school, I think we would be perhaps happy if we wanted to carry on teaching, that to go back to school, and mainstream schools included. I really enjoyed my time there, and it was of different circumstances that made me look for something else, you know, when I came here. And I'm really happy that I'm here, but and yeah, as you were saying, like, take everything, you know, you do become in some ways our personalities change as well, I guess. We are a community, and we all, not just the kids, change, and they've, you know, but we develop, I guess, or evolve in.
But it's
certain
every
ways,
job
and-
as well. Like,
Yeah,
I
it's
feel
every
like
job,
I brought
yeah,
here
every
some
school.
things that I learned in other schools,
Yeah.
and they work here really well, and in my
Just-
classroom.
Yeah.
Like,
That
I
time,
mean,
yes.
Interesting.
I don't imagine myself going back to another school, but if I had to, I think the kids getting the ideas, whatever the curriculum they would give me, I could, in their flexibility, I will put their interest more and give them a little bit more value to their opinions. Yeah, choice. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, I think being at Summerhill, you suddenly realize how much policy they have in mainstream that isn't necessarily needed, like the hat wearing, like all the other silly rules they have, which just encourage kind of conflict in the classroom. Whereas, you know, I think I'd happily go back to mainstream, but I'd be much more vocal about not accepting kind of some of this rubbish policy they have. Exactly.
Okay, good. Well, we're done for time. We're a little bit over. Very sorry, there's another session behind us. There wasn't. Okay, we're good. So thank you all very much for coming to the session, and thank you all,
Thank you for
the
your
audience, for
interest.
coming as well.